Okay, friends, Steve Guttenberg here. Today it's an interview, an extended interview with my pal Sean from Zero Fidelity. I'm a big admirer of his channel. And he's done a couple of videos about why audio products cost what they cost. Are they too expensive? Are companies making piles of cash? What the hell is going on? So Sean and I get deep into it. And we also talk about the misconceptions that people have of reviewers like me and Sean, that kind of thing. But mostly it's about why stuff costs what it costs. So let's hear what Sean has to say. Why is audio, not high-end audio, just audio, why is it so expensive? I mean, the question has come up a million times. I'm looking at that
Sure.
speaker, that's an $8 tweeter and a $10 woofer. Why is it $500? And
Yeah.
Sean is uniquely positioned to tell us why. Why is
Well, maybe an overstatement, but I do have enough experience on many different sides of the industry, both in manufacturing, logistics, retail, to be able to put the pieces together in a way to where it can perhaps give an idea as to why the cost seems so disproportionate with the cost of the materials inside of the
right?
product. So, and I guess that's going to be, a part of the focus of today's video, right? Is to just go over
It's
that with people.
fundamental because I don't blame people for having that outrage.
Yeah.
It's like it's not that expensive. Why is the speaker so much money?
Yeah. And I think,
Not thinking that the product isn't just the parts inside the product. They're not the cost of the product.
yeah. And there's a lot of hidden costs that unless you've put yourself in a position, in other words, to understand what we're about to say today, you almost have to pretend like you're going to quit your job either today or maybe within a month. And then from this point on, you're going to make your living, whether it's for yourself or to provide food for on the table for your family. It's going to be strictly through offering a hi-fi product, right? Once you put yourself in that position, suddenly you're going to quickly learn about all the other additional costs that go into bringing something to market. And suddenly, as you said, those parts cost, those drivers and the crossover components and all that, suddenly that becomes this little minuscule part of all that's involved in doing it. Now, I think before we begin, I need to make it clear that, Steve and I aren't going to be apologists for manufacturers. This isn't going to be in defense of the industry so much as an explanation
Right.
of what we've observed in it. Because one thing, I think to start off, let's just get this out of the way. How many people do you know who's gotten genuinely rich off of this?
Very few. I could count them on one hand, I think.
Yeah, I'm about the same here. Like people who've spent a lifetime working in the business, working with their company and being very successful at it, who can then take a look back and look at the rewards, the fruit of all their labor and say, I've lived a pretty good life. I have a great home, nice cars. Most of these guys don't live like that.
Right. Most of them don't
For
make
a
it.
good reason. There's
Don't
just,
make it. I got to tell you, when I started in the biz and I was working for Sound by Sound,
yeah.
I went to my first CES. This is in the late 70s. I saw all these new companies at CES. It was at this place called the Sahara Hotel. And
Uh-huh.
when I went the next year, three-quarters of them were gone, and it was replaced by a whole new crop of startup audiophile high-end companies, right? And I
Yeah.
noticed every year there'd be all these new guys, and then most of them didn't make it to their second anniversary. There was a whole new group. So people, basically, it seemed like it was their dream, right? I want to be in the audio business. I have this idea for a speaker or an amplifier or a cable or something. I'm going to put my pennies
Mhm.
together, go to CES, try to get dealers, try to get things together.
When you're starting your own business, one of the conundrums you run into, right? Let's just say you entered this and you say, well, I want to be different. I don't want to have high margins. I want to offer the best value that I can to people because I feel like nobody else does that. So now you enter this kind of conundrum. So if you're making low margin and you don't really have a lot of money coming in at first, that means you're going to be the guy doing everything. You're answering the emails, just as you said on the, dealing with customers on the sales floor. Well, now instead of on the sales floor in your shop, they're via email. So you have to handle that while at the same time building the product. And the thing is, if it becomes very successful, Well, now you're not going to have enough time in the day to actually fulfill orders, but you're not also going to have enough money to really hire someone to help you. And you may not even trust their ability to produce the quality, workmanship. And then when you do finally find that nice balance to where you have a good enough amount of demand, you're capable of more or less fulfilling it. Maybe there's a 30-day wait or a 60-day wait, but you're rocking and rolling. Here's the thing. The money that you are making, and you're not making much, remember, you're doing the low margin thing. You want to provide value to the community. You're going to have to reinvest that money back into the business. It's going to be probably a good, if you're lucky, a year or two until you can finally start pulling something away for yourself that even remotely looks like a decent income. And I think that's the biggest confusion people have is, and I understand this, it's no secret that the margins in hi-fi, as I just mentioned earlier, it's pretty high, especially when you compare to every single other industry. We're used to living in this time to where we know that companies like Best Buy and whatnot, when you buy that $2,000 like MacBook Pro, you think that, no, they're probably making a lot of money off me. No, they're making about $100 maybe. And with the other companies, especially more like HP, Toshiba, and all that, they're making maybe $30. Either that, or maybe there's a promotion going on to sell it for a loss, and the manufacturer actually reimburses them later for it. And we're so used to those low margins that when we look at hi-fi, it just doesn't make sense. We feel like we're being ripped off, and that's where economy of scale comes into play, because Toshiba, for example, just sold more laptops in this conversation that we're having right now than just about every high-end audio company is going to sell of their products, at least per SKU, for the next year. I mean, that's the cataclysmic difference between economies of scale and why they can get away with it and a high-end audio company just can't. Yeah, and the philosophy of build it and then they will come definitely doesn't apply here.
No.
Especially in a market with so many great options. So let's talk about the cost of it, right? So I'm going to drink some water as well. So first and foremost, let's say you're going to start off on this adventure. Well, unless you're independently wealthy, you're probably going to need some capital in place to even begin, right? Because when you're starting off, your purchasing power is basically like nothing. So in other words, when it comes to purchasing those parts, you're going to be paying pretty much what the average guy in the street is going to pay. You might get a couple bucks off here and there, and that adds up to a decent amount over time, but your building cost is going to be pretty high. So what's the first step? Well, if you're not an engineer yourself, then you probably need to hire an engineer or to find some way to contract somebody who's very talented at what they do and to work out a situation to where they're willing to work with you to, get your idea off the ground. So number one, though, is when you bring a product to market, you need to have some kind of infrastructure. How are you going to build it? Are you building it yourself? Is it literally you building it in a shop with, tools, and you're just building this one by one by one, and that's how you begin? Are you contracting somebody local to do the work for you? Or maybe you have a decent amount of capital and you're able to contract somebody like, say, in Asia to start manufacturing batches. Well, the thing that you need to know about producing things in Asia is most of these companies, first and foremost, some of them are incredible. The reason why a lot of stuff is produced in Asia isn't because of the typical, I think, mindset a lot of Americans and even Europeans have, like cheap slave labor and all that. It's actually not as cheap. The real reason that nobody really wants to admit out loud is a lot of the Chinese factories are significantly better than European and American factories at producing consistent high quality products for a low price. And oftentimes the build quality is better than what you can get here, quite frankly, especially in mass production. But here's the thing, working with those companies, most of them won't even look at you unless you're opening order with them. Like, let's just say you want to produce speakers. You're going to have to order minimum 100 cabinets or 100 speakers with them. Normally, and how this works is you would have to identify what parts you want to use in your speaker, the drivers, the crossover parts. You have to have all of that shipped to your manufacturer in China. So let's say you use ScanSpeak. Well, you're going to have the drivers shipped to the Chinese manufacturer so they can install it. And the thing is, oftentimes production woes, which you're going to discover as you start doing this business, can be very complicated because maybe the crossover manufacturer or the manufacturer that you're using to source components from, they're going to have a shortage in supply. So you can't even bring your product to market until they get their stuff together. So anyways, bottom line though, the real cost is usually you have to have a minimum of 100 components in order for any one of these manufacturers to take you seriously. When a big company like Klipsch, for example, wants to bring one of their products to market, like say a Reference Premier, most of those companies aren't going to even touch them unless it's an order of about 6,000 some odd units. And you can imagine the capital outlay just to get that done. And then you have to consider other things. Well, what about packaging? Packaging is so much more expensive than what people actually realize, especially good materials like the soft yet strong foam, double boxed and all that. So when you start looking at all the materials that it takes just to get the product to somebody's home safely, you look at the shipping costs, because odds are you're not going to have a big beastly shipping account, right? You might be able to sign up for a UPS or FedEx account. You'll get a slightly better deal than the average guy, but it's not going to be much. And in order for them to give you a really good deal, I mean, you have to be a pretty big company at that point. So you're going to have to account for that. You're going to have to account for loss, because oftentimes things happen to your product. You have to consider insurance on getting the product from Asia or wherever, right? So let's just say just over to Europe. Like maybe you want to do, I'm going to make it in America. Well, you still have to consider insurance, and then there's going to be the licensing and fees. If you want to produce electronics, you have to go through the proper protocols to get the certifications. Guess what? This all costs money. And oftentimes you have to re-up on this every single year, and it's many thousands of dollars in some cases, depending on the product. Then you have licensing fees. You have tariffs that you need to consider. There's so much that goes into it. Where do I even begin? So first, you have to pick your business model. Are you going to go consumer direct? Skip the middleman, right? Are you going to try to follow more of the traditional retail model? You build it, you get distributors, and then you get retailers. Many different ways that you can go about this, but each of them have their implications, because now it's time to talk about time equity and the cost of that. There's R&D, number one. What do people want? What can I bring to market at a price that I think is fair, that people will be interested in? Then you have to actually figure out, like, well, can I even hire help? If you're a consumer direct guy, and this is something I'm sure you can speak to experience with, there's a lot of small consumer direct companies that are run by great people, but they wear all the hats. They're service and support. They are R&D. They're everyone. They're the person going to the trade shows. They are everything. And there's something to be said for that. I mean, you're going to be working 80 to 120 hours a week, and you're probably not going to be profiting very much in the beginning to get anything off of this. So anyways, I can go on and on, but I'm not keeping this very organized. We're doing this in a moment.
Right there, though. Let's say you're going to be as a very small thing. Let's say like a headphone amplifier. So weighing like 4 pounds or something. So it's small, it's light.
Easy to deal with.
Do the whole thing on one circuit board, use a wall wart power supply. So I'm trying to make it as simple as possible, right?
Okay, yeah.
You say in your head, I want to make this killer headphone amp. I'm an engineer. I got this great circuit, and I got it. And but then I have to go to shows. I have to let the world know that this thing exists, or I have to advertise on somebody's channel, right? So what percentage of that startup company's cost would just be beyond the cost of making this physical, very small, easy to ship thing? Is it going to cost you to let the world know that it exists?
Significant. So, I mean, I'm going to throw a generic number out there, and bear in mind, everybody is watching this, the number fluctuates heavily depending on the company and the business model. But by and large, parts cost is going to be about 10% or even less of the overall MSRP. Again, depends on the product, business model, but that's usually what you're going with. And that's partially because of what Steve just mentioned, marketing cost. So trade shows are very expensive to attend. Right. A lot of people who are on a budget, they try to drive to these shows if it's within their country and to load up on a van. But by and large, most companies on average spend anywhere between $5,000 is the cheapest you're probably going to get away with, and usually anywhere between $10,000 to $30,000. Some companies spend over $100,000 if they just want to go crazy, right? But on average, about $10,000 to $20,000 per show is what you're going to spend, because you have the rooms that you have to pay for, number one, then you have the food, and then you have the plane tickets, and then quite frankly, if you're a more mature company, you have people to take out to dinner. And those dinners are expensive. You can't take them to McDonald's. See, when I was actually doing this, I would take them to McDonald's or Burger King. And I'm like, you know what? This is what you get out of me. But that's not the standard protocol. So you have those expenses. Let's talk about advertising costs. Look, here's the bottom line. When you send these products out for review, oftentimes it's better to have friends than enemies. And not every publication, not every YouTuber works this way, but odds are, depending on the product you have, you might have to say goodbye to a lot of it. So you have to allocate all these products that you're invested into and almost write it off as a loss, because odds are the reviewer may want to keep it. And if it's inexpensive, who cares? But odds are you're going to have to say goodbye to the product, whether it's for long-term loan. A lot of YouTubers, for example, they say, give me X amount of dollars or I want to keep the product. A lot of publications want money. We won't go into details there, but some of them are insanely expensive, many thousands of dollars a month, just to have the opportunity to maybe get an ad or to maybe get a review, with the only guarantee that you get show coverage. And here's the bottom line though. You can avoid all of that, right? You can make a decision that, no, I'm not going to play the game, right? I'm not going to be that company. I'm not playing the game. I make a good thing and I'm just going to let word of mouth, do its thing. You can do that, but the odds of you having any longevity is very slim, because like it or not, these trade shows, reviewers, people at forums, this is how you gain interest. This is how you gain momentum. This is where your clientele, especially now, since almost everything's online and going to brick and mortars, well, right now is impossible, but there's not that many. You have to play the game in some regards. And you bet your butt that is absolutely going into the cost of your product.
Right.
So now we have the cost of travel, the trade shows, the marketing efforts, even marketing campaigns on things like Facebook, Instagram, so on and so forth. It's not free. There's two other main costs I need to go over here. Number one is when you're self-employed, 1099 or whatever, if you're a contractor, I guess. But anyways, bottom line is there's no subsidy. So if you're working a normal job right now, you may have the luxury of healthcare and whatnot being subsidized. When you're working for yourself, I mean, taxes, you bear the full brunt of it. Yeah, you have write-offs and all that, but health insurance can be more difficult to procure, or you may not even be able to provide it for your family at first because your company doesn't even bring in enough money. And now let's talk about the retailer. Retailers, they want their margins because they have a lot of costs too. On the electronic side, it can range anywhere between 20 points on average, 20 to 30 points. In other words, 20, 30% discount is what they get. And then they sell that for a profit. Or with loudspeakers, it could be around 40 to 60, right? And a lot of people, this is what a lot of people don't understand though. They look at the retailers and like, oh, those greedy so-and-sos, look at them making all that money. And what they don't understand, and you've worked in retail, you've seen this, I'm going to shut up for a second and let you talk. How many retailers really and truly sell the product for MSRP and laugh all the way to the bank? They don't. They have staff to hire, whether it's sales staff or logistics or whatever. A lot of them will eat taxes, or they'll have to discount a little bit here and there, basically to hire in the product, the more they're having to give up. There's trade-ins to where they're sacrificing profit. There's so many different things going on to where they're not making that margin. And plus on top of the bills and all that they already have to pay.
Yeah.
There's a lot that goes into it.
I used to say to my customers who say, let's say it was a $2,000 speaker, and they'd say, look, I know that the owner of the store paid $1,000 because it's a 50-point line and he's going to make $1,000 profit on it. I'd say, well, yeah, he would if he didn't pay me and he didn't pay for rent. And air conditioning a store, like a 10,000 square foot store, could be thousands of dollars a month. Right?
And your power bill?
There's power, there's liability insurance, and those ads, same for retailers, they have to spend money on advertising and marketing. So all of that eats way into that 50-point line. I would say it winds up being more like 10 or 12% is what they wind up making. So
it's true.
It's a tough rack.
And I have nothing to base what I'm about to say off of, nothing scientific at least, but I have a feeling that you could take like a pair of Harbeth P3 ESR, sell them for like say $1,000 loss. I don't think it's going to change anything. Audiophiles are going to rejoice and they're probably going to lose a lot of money on selling them. But do you think that's really going to bring new people into audio? Do you think it's going to cause this revolution where the average person, the average consumer says, you know what, I don't want these AirPods. Screw that. And they throw them in the trash. I want a Harbeth. Come on. Even then, that's not going to happen. I mean, and it just is what it is. That's always been the story with hi-fi, at least as I'm aware of, even since the 50s. It's always been this little niche like industry. So there's a lot of costs. And the bottom line is you look at the cost of a speaker or your headphone amplifier. Maybe it costs you 20 bucks to build. Maybe it costs you $100 something to build. But then when you look at all the other costs that we went over to bring it to market, just to build them in any kind of meaningful quantity, to ship them, to account for insurance, loss, taxes, all of those other different things, paying the bills to keep the saws going and all that stuff, to pay for the hardware, to pay for the trade shows, the marketing, and let alone the retail model, if that's what you're going to go with, forget it.
So let
it
me ask one other question in regards. So let's say
Yeah.
you subcontract it out to Asia or local distributor, right? And they
Yeah.
made 100 pairs of speakers. No, let's say 100 amplifiers, 100 headphone amplifiers. Keep it, it's a tiny thing, right?
Uh-huh.
You get in your shipment and you got 100 boxes. What percentage of them typically would actually be working as designed and hoped for? Not 100%.
Here's where you have to really do your homework
Uh-huh.
on the manufacturer that you use. They are not all created equal,
Mhm.
right? Some of them are exceptional, but the exceptional ones cost a lot of money. They're
Right.
exceptional for a reason, right? Only the Sonys and the Panasonics of this world will have access to them. So this is what it really takes. What it really takes is for you to actually travel to China. If you're making them in China, you actually have to travel there multiple times, and you have to actually inspect how things are done. Is it done to your satisfaction? Take random samples, test them, have samples shipped to you before you bring something to market. Test it, because let me give you an example, and I won't name the company, but there was a product that I was working with, and right before they were going to ship to one of my retailers, I found out that there was a resistor in line with the circuit, the protection circuit, right? That was out of value, and it would actually trip the protection circuit, ergo the unit wouldn't work. So I had to get all of them completely unboxed and everything redone right at the last freaking second. And that's loss. That is pure loss. At that point, you can sell it. You're lucky to break even,
Uh-huh.
right? But the bottom line is you have to keep on top of it, because if you don't, if you choose the more affordable manufacturer, which is probably what you're going to have to do in the beginning, you're going to have to deal with that. You know, they're just putting it together to making sure they're going to do a good job, but they're not going to sit there and test each individual part that you send them for tolerances. They're just going to put it on and away you go. Now, the odds of it working, I would say if you do your job most of the time, it's going to be fine. So, I mean, and it's all these things that as a consumer, you don't think about. Why would you?
Right.
But this all goes into it, let alone service and support.
Right.
That's not cheap. That's really not cheap. And when you have returns, those returns cost you a lot of money.
Mm.
And what about when products don't sell? Let's say you have retailers, you sell them like 100 units of blah. 6 months goes by, they haven't sold them. Most of them are going to either discount the heck out of it, which you may not want, or they're going to want you to buy it back.
Right.
Now you have shipping, you have to give them money. My God, it just doesn't end, which is why people don't really get rich at this, even though it seems like they might given the margins. But the bottom line is it's a lot of work. There's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of expenses, and it all, that's why I always say the market leverages itself very well, regardless of if you run a consumer direct company, typical retail distribution, it all tends to balance out.
So let's pick the easiest target of all then in the audio business,
Okay.
where the margins are huge. Cables. Okay. It's a wire that you didn't even have to make, right? You bought from the supplier, you solder ends onto it, and you're good.
Pulled somewhere else. Yeah.
Anybody
So,
rich?
you know what? Monster Cable would be a great example of a company who did very well with that.
Yeah. Okay.
So the answer is that's I guess you could say that could be argued as one of the more egregious reasons of why people are so suspicious of hi-fi to begin with. There's a lot of trust issues, and oftentimes I think for very good reason. Now, there is more to building a cable than I think a lot of people realize. I mean, getting one thing about Monster Cable, right? I mean, we could spend all day going about the merits and maybe the negatives of the business. But one of the things I liked about him is that the consistency in build quality was astounding. Most of the people I knew in the install world, professional audio world, they loved the products because it's like, I'd never heard of somebody getting a Monster Cable product that was ever broken or couldn't withstand abuse. That does actually take time and really good technique in order to build. I mean, I have plenty of other cables, I won't name names. The connectors break down all the time. The soldering job is really wacky. But there, let's just call it what it is. The profit margins were, I would say were, it has changed, but back when I was in retail, the margins for cables was about 70% on average. That's where the stores made their money.
That's how they survived, some of them.
It's true.
You know?
It's true. That's absolutely true.
But I would point out that despite what the perception is, other than the establishment wire cable companies in high-end audio, how many new ones are there? How many new kids on the block have joined, you know, the Monster Cable and Cardis and Wire World and Nordis? I can't think. There's Triode Wire, may be one that is a relatively young company. But despite the impression that everybody's making piles of cash, if that was the case, I'd see more and more new cable companies saying, "Yeah, I want some of that," and I can't think of any really.
So here's what I think happened there, and this is a topic really for probably a different video.
Okay.
There was a time, and I would say a little over 10 years ago, probably, I mean, I only got into this hobby in 2004, so I'm kind of pulling this out my butt a little bit, but from what I can tell, from 2000 to 2010, it was kind of a boon for aftermarket cables. It was something that was always controversial, but you had plenty of companies that were making lots of money off of it, and it was a great time to be in the game. But I think what's happened, and I actually think this is in a way a good thing, is that people, audiophiles in particular, became more and more suspicious of the claims, right? And the prices. Like, okay, how come this cable costs this much money? What is in this cable that makes it so exotic and so expensive? And you make all these claims about what it can do, but there's nothing to back it up. Amplifier manufacturers, not all of them, but electronics manufacturers, at least some of them, will try to justify their claims by saying, hey, look at these measurements. This is what we get from this amplifier. Look at this distortion level, 20 to 20, blah, 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 blah. A loudspeaker manufacturer, especially the pro guys like PMC and whatnot, they'll brag about, here's our frequency response and how easy it is to drive, and da, da, da. But with cables, how many companies even offer basic LCR measurements? Just at the very least say, here's the resistance, here's the blah. None of them. And I think we're living in a time where people are saying, hey, look, it's okay to make an aftermarket cable. It's okay to charge an okay amount of money for it, because it can take actually a lot of effort to build some of these cables, right? It really can, depending on the unique geometry, I guess you could say, they want to use. But the bottom line is that just come on, give the consumer something at least objective to sink their teeth into. And I think that's what's happening now, is that there's so much of a resentment now towards that side of the market that it's almost stupid to get in it. You're probably not going to make money. It's going to be a big headache. It's going to send your blood pressure through the roof. You'll probably become hypertensive in like 5 minutes. So that's what I'm guessing.
Cynthia interviewed Ray Kimber for me, I don't know, 6 months. And I was amazed. He employs like 55 people.
Yeah. That's
a payroll.
That's a huge payroll. That is a giant payroll. And I think Ray Kimber got into it at the right time, quite frankly. Like perfect timing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a different side of the market. So, but by and large, like with the average hi-fi product that most people can wrap their heads around, speakers, amps, and whatnot, it's expensive. That's just all I can say. And if somebody out there who's listening to this has found a way to buck against all of what I just said and to subvert it and to bring a product to market, the guys that I've seen that have come closest to it would probably be Shit Audio. They've come very close to it. And even then, I think their products average out with everyone else's. But I think what's impressive about it is how they get it done. About keeping most of it in the United States, keeping something that would be an extraordinarily expensive business model and building these affordable products that actually perform very well. But it's because those dudes are very smart and very well connected.
And they've been in the business a long time. They didn't start.
That's exactly it.
Right. They've been around. The other company I thought you were going to say was U-Turn Audio.
I'm just not, you know me. I love vinyl, but I don't really mess with this stuff. So
I interviewed those guys. They had a Kickstarter. And they said, we're going to make a made in the U.S. turntable and sell it for, I think it was $200.
Yeah.
Have an original tone arm, blah, 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 blah. And they had this Kickstarter, and I actually did a story on their Kickstarter, and the Kickstarter did really well. And I think they needed to raise $200,000. And they raised, I think they went way over their thing. But I remember the interview when they were still doing the Kickstarter, I said, so it was 3 guys, Ben and these 2 other guys. I said, so do you have any manufacturing experience? Do you know how to make stuff? And they said, no, we're going to hire this guy. And I'm like, oh, no.
Oh
You know
man,
what? They actually did it, and they're still around. It's got to be 4 or 5 years now since they started. So
that's awesome.
some people, I think, just out of sheer force of will,
Yep.
just plow through it and get it done.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely. And really and truly, and I understand there's a lot of people out there that no matter what I say, no matter what anybody says, they're going to look at this and say, hey, look, build cost is this. I expect the price to be this. And to them, I'd say this is a great time to get into kits. The resale value is probably going to be trash. Just call it what it is. That's the risk you take. But kits offer kind of this good middle ground. The people who offer kits, make no mistake, they're making good money off of you. They're making their margins, but at least you're getting to bypass a lot of the stuff that goes into it, the labor cost to build a cabinet, the retail model, and all that. So that's a good way, again, to subvert it for anybody who's they just can't get over like what we were talking about today.
they can prove us wrong. Well, that's cool. I
Yeah.
hope they do. That
Help. But the big misconceptions that I want to focus on, again, something Darko brought up, which is, I think a lot of people have misconceptions about reviewers, right? Especially on the YouTube platform. And one of the videos that he made about it was basically commenting, and this is something you and I have spoken about at great length, is how people, I don't know if they expect us to, but maybe they hope that everything that we've ever heard, we not only remember like we heard it yesterday, but we know how it interacts
right.
with every single component ever made.
Yeah.
Right? Every single, if it's hi-fi and it exists, 1970s Pioneer, whatever receiver, how does that pair up to the Emotiva, blah, blah, blah. Like, we supposed to just know it like that and to be
You
able to
come
provide them
closer
with
than
this
most.
guidance.
That's the thing.
What's that?
I've seen you come closer than most. When you did your live streams, you did that like, so what's better, Marantz or, and you were just, I was in awe. I was in awe of you.
Oh my God.
The first time people ask me that, I go, I don't know. Alma versus Marantz? Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know, man. I feel like that's definitely something I wish more people understood, is that this is a line that, again, an aforementioned reviewer said to somebody in the comments section. It sounds crass, but I think it's true. It's like, I'm a reviewer. I'm not really a hi-fi consultant. I think all of us love to help people, right? All of us love to help people. I know you get tons of emails. God knows I do as well. But, at the end of the day, I wish more people knew this. Like, our experience and what we're confident with, at least, is going to be kind of limited to what we talk about, especially more in the recent history. Unless there's a product that, I know you've said this before, if you loved it and it really stood out to you and it's just etched in that memory, okay, you know what? You could probably even talk to them about something that you really loved 10 years ago or whatever,
Yeah,
and have some kind of confidence with it. But by and large, useful help will be limited from any one source. And this is the value, in my opinion, of an experienced hi-fi dealer. This is where I think they really earn their keep and earn their margin, is because they can be that hi-fi guide. They can learn more about you as an individual, your room, your taste, everything about you, and actually put you on a course that'll make you happy over the long term. I mean, yeah, they're getting something out of it, but that doesn't matter. I mean, the whole point is to get you into a system that you're going to love for many years.
yeah.
That's just my take on
Well,
it.
since I've done retail and this, I can say, I said it. I said you should trust the salesman before you should trust a reviewer, unless it's a reviewer that you have a long history
Yeah.
with, that you come to say, I'm on the same, wavelength as that reviewer. But the
Sure.
dealer, the reviewer, if the reviewer gives out poor advice and you buy the wrong thing, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? It's like, oh, I'll never read or watch that reviewer again. If the salesman or retailer gives you poor advice, they're going to lose money in the future because you will never, ever go back there. So they have way more to lose than misleading people. People seem to think that salesmen enjoy, selling whatever piece of crap just to get it off the floor. And yes, of course, that happens. But for the most part, they want happy customers, because happy customers come back and buy more stuff and bring their brother-in-law or their friend to buy more stuff from you. So, because that's what I did. I did that for a long time. And I wanted my customers happy. Happiness was paramount to me. Absolutely.
I'll keep this very quick. So in a previous life, one of my jobs was growing markets for many companies on the retail front, right? Not high-end audio. It was more like, TV manufacturers and so on and so forth. And a lot of my jurisdictions involved Best Buy stores, meaning going in, train management, the staff, and all that. And it became more than just a glorified rep. It became teaching people how to ask key discovery questions and then put the right product into the right person's hand, even if it wasn't what I was there to represent, because it's the same story. You want to make sure that they're happy. You don't want a return coming back, and you want to make sure that that person's so dang happy that they're going to come back to the store just to tell you how amazing that TV or that sound system or whatever that they put together is. And I think that's far more important than moving a box off the floor. And yeah, I feel like there's enough people like that in the hi-fi industry that overrule kind of the less desirable folks that just want to move boxes. I think the market's actually weeded out a lot of those people, quite frankly.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of hi-fi sales guys in New York, and I'm impressed that most of them really know their stuff, and they, more than me, have current experience listening to lots of different products and lots of different situations and hearing the products in people's homes. And I bow to them to say, hey, what's happening? What's good? What should I be, checking out? Because they know. I review things sequentially, one thing after another, after another, after another. They're hearing all of them all the time.
Yeah.
So,
and they get to spend time with it. We,
right.
by and large, I can't speak to every reviewer, but usually it's you take it out the box, you listen to it, you do your review, boom, move on, back in the box, off to wherever it goes. Or in my case, for God's sakes, it stays in my house forever, and it drives me insane. So either way, the fact remains, like, you spend this little bit of time with a product, you're confident in your assessment of it, but then you move on. That's the next, and then the next. The cycle repeats itself over and over again. Whereas these guys, not only did they get to experience these products all the time on a daily basis, but here's the key thing. The really good ones, they get to go to people's homes and experience it in different environments. And they get to feel, this is how it interacts in this room, in this room, in this room, on this music and that music, and on this kind of gear. So in a lot of respects, I feel like a good dealer with good ears and an open mind are oftentimes more reliable than most reviewers I know in terms of providing good advice and to be able to paint a picture as to what this product is really going to be capable of.
Yeah. Because remember, the dealers aren't just familiar with the products that they sell.
Yeah.
Dealing with their customers that have stuff that they don't sell, right?
So all the time. I'd say half the time.
They sell together, they go to people's homes, right? So it's a
Yeah.
whole other level of knowledge. Right now, maybe I should go back. Maybe I should spend a couple of years selling hi-fi. So
Am I talking you back into it?
not really, no.
All right, I think we covered the topics.
We did it, man. This is good stuff.
Yeah.
This is epic.
I wonder if anybody has actually had the constitution to sit or listen through this.
You'd be surprised. When I've done these interviews that are like, I usually chop them down to about 20 minutes. A lot of the comments are, no, you should let them go longer. Sean.
Yep.
Zero Fidelity. You're one of my go-to sites to, when I wake up in the morning, see what's happening.
It was a pleasure being here, man. I appreciate you inviting me for this discussion. It's fun, man. I always enjoy my conversations with you.
If this one works, if you're happy with the end result.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, you'll be a Zoom guy. You'll be Zooming people.
I'll be Zooming people, huh? There we go. No, I think, I think it'd be cool to do this again. Let's see what people think. If they like it, we'll do it again.
All right. So I will do my wrap up. My name's Steve Guttenberg. You haven't seen much of me. You've mostly looked at this guy here, Sean. So thank you, Sean, for being here. This is the Audiophiliac Daily Show. Check out Sean's channel called Zero Fidelity. I will, of course, link to it below. And have a great day. I'm not going to do my whole closing spiel in your honor. I don't want to bore you doing all my plugs and stuff. So I'm just going to say thank you. Thank you, Sean, for being here. And thank you guys for watching. And I hope to see you guys back here again very, very soon. Bye-bye.